Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. We're both, I can see you, Kieran, down in Chelsea. We're both chuckling because we've time travelled from Christmas Day to New Year's Day in the course of just 1 minute. It's just really, I hate the phrase churning it out, but it really seems like we've done enough pods in the last few days, Kieran, to last. I feel that we're getting. I've seen the Baroness look people up and down. It's a terrifying sight. I feel like this pod is being looked up and down by the Baroness, and it's a look that says, "Have a couple of days off, boys." But I'm not going to ask you how your Christmas was, Kieran, because it hasn't happened.
Exactly.
Let's just assume that we had a lovely Christmas. Palace and Brighton drew 0-0, and we were both happy, and we all got lovely presents. And Finley didn't attack the postman. Finley went on one, didn't he?
He did.
Last week. He really properly went on one. Maybe, Kieran, he resents the fact that your postman wears shorts in Sussex style.
Organic shorts, I'm sure.
Organic shorts, of course, organic shorts. Yes, let's. I think the one thing we should assume, Kieran, this is going out on New Year's Day. I will probably have a hangover, so let's keep this short and quiet, shall we? Our first question, Kieran, because it's Questions Day, I believe. It must be, as I'm looking at an email full of questions, Kieran, so I guess it's Questions Day. But our first question comes from Matt Piggins, which is a cracking name, Matt Piggins. Are player contract add-ons, such as appearance bonuses, amortised?
It depends. And what a better way to start 2024. It very much depends upon the wording of the contract, but in the vast majority of instances, there is likely to be an obligating or a trigger event, which means that the buying club now is obliged to pay. So I would suspect that it would be recognised immediately rather than being amortised over the remainder of the contract, because it tends to relate to a historic event rather than anything to do with the future. So I think in the case of Dele Alli and his transfer from Spurs to Everton have to pay an additional sum of money once he's played on 20 occasions. So because that's looking backwards, because he's from the start of his career at Everton until he's played that 20th game, you'd have to say we can't then spread that particular cost over the next potential 2 or 3 years of his contract. But it would very much vary on circumstance. But in my view, you'd recognise immediately because it's a trigger event.
Andrew Lee has our next question on New Year's Day, Kieran. And Andrew says, I live in Germany, which is a lovely country to live in at this time of year, and until January 2021 was able to buy the latest shirt of my team, Bolton Wanderers, at no additional cost, as the UK was still part of the EU single market. Since then, I have to pay import duties in person each time a shirt is delivered. This slows down delivery and increases both the cost of the shirt and the time I spend queuing at the local post office. Are these duties due to different VAT regimes in the UK and the EU, or has it got something to do with a particular clause in the EU-UK Free Trade Agreement? Are bigger clubs able to somehow circumvent this issue, for example, by having warehouses based in the EU? Sorry, I was distracted halfway through that question, Kieran, by a message popping up on my screen saying, will you buy chestnuts? From Ali. It's just, I'm easily distracted as it is. And there's another message I just heard. You probably heard the ting, which says, please will you buy olives as well? And sorry, she forgot to put kisses on the first text about chestnuts, so she's put double kisses on the second text. It's sweet, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. Anyway, back to sorry, Andrew. Olives. Yeah, olives.
Oh,
I love it. Until about 5 years ago, I was with you, Kieran, but I can't recommend. And I know people will be getting tweets going, "Call yourself working class, eating olives." Olives are picked by peasants, so of course olives are Gordal olives. Kieran, get yourself a tin of Gordal olives. It will change your your olive opinion completely. Tin of Gordal
I've
olives.
been told that if you're an anti-olive person, and I am, that if you're brave enough and you eat 7 olives, it will cure you.
Oh,
So I've never managed to get that far. It's a bit like Candyman. I don't know whether you've seen the film Candyman, where if you say Candyman 3 times, he reappears from death and then goes and slaughters you. But I've never got more than three olives into it. No, I can't do this.
Well, I think we should apologise to all our listeners who are emergency workers, Kieran, for the fact that we used bravery and olives in the same sentence. I would say, what's the bravest thing you ever did? I ate 7 olives. Oh my God, you're a hero. Also, why is it you happily tuck into squid ceviche, but you won't eat olives? That's strange. Sorry, Andrew. There was a question at the start of all this.
Sorry. Yes. I've got to take issue here with Andrew. He appears to be having a bit of a moan and saying that Brexit has not been an unparalleled success. I think you're looking at it through the wrong lens, Andrew. Because you're having to go and spend more money on your Bolton shirt, it means that you've got less money to spend on other things which might not be good for you. Now, see, that's what's called sunlit uplands.
Very good point.
Former Prime Minister would point.
Yeah.
But this is ultimately it's part of the agreement, the quasi-free trade agreement between the UK and the European Union, in which there are specific tariffs and VAT charges which will be applied in respect of specific categories of product, and clothing comes within that. So I know that I had to send one of our listeners who lives in Spain wanted a copy of Unfit and Improper Persons. And I know it cost me a fortune at this end just to post it. You can't buy it there. And I think he had to go and pay import duties when it arrived as well. So this is a function of not operating in a single market environment, that in order to protect and it works both ways. If the UK is importing certain products from the EU, there are potential taxation implications then, and clearly things have to be inspected, which slows down the process. And the same applies when goods are going from the UK to the EU. But that's what we voted for. As far as the bigger clubs are concerned, the clubs themselves aren't selling the kits, it's the manufacturers. So Adidas and Nike and Puma all have stores in Paris, Munich, Turin, and so on, and therefore they are the manufacturers. There aren't actually UK manufacturers of kits, I think, with the exception of Castore. So, from Puma's a German company, Adidas is a German company, Nike is US based, but it has offices in many EU countries. So that way you don't end up having to go and pay these additional duties and costs.
Why were you sending the book? Do Amazon not deliver to Spain, or did he want a special autograph message?
He did want an autograph copy. Yes, of course. It's actually very difficult. I think in certain markets they said that the book might be available in February or March if they can be bothered to add us to their list on Amazon.
I should point out
we're not being sponsored by Amazon for this episode, are we?
We are not being sponsored, and other delivery companies who don't pay proper wages to their staff are available, obviously. I'm just going to point this out, Kieran. I need to get this off my chest. If anybody is going to ask Kieran and I to sign the book, can you ask me first? Because Kieran has very flamboyant writing and takes up the whole page, and I have to cram my name in after his elaborate message underneath, because Kieran has much nicer writing than I have, but I need a bit of space for mine. I don't get it. But
because I'm left-handed.
Oh, is that what it is?
And because being Catholic and left-handed meant that you used to get beaten by nuns for being left-handed at an early age, because your hand, because everything you had to write it in the good old days was in ink, so of course your hand is trailing behind, creating a mess. So I had to create this sort of slightly crab-like approach to writing, And as a result of that, my handwriting has become quite neat.
It's very neat.
Strange
It's
consequences
lovely,
of my strange life.
Yeah, I have having been through a similar education to you, Kieran. I have a theory about why you never see a young nun. That's because it takes 30 years to train them to be that nasty, basically.
Yes, they were horrible.
I don't know. You could watch it. They look lovely. I mean, you can't help but smile when you see a nun coming towards you, and then suddenly, why is this woman hitting me? I didn't do anything wrong. Probably did. Stephen Smith has our next question.
Hold on.
Hello.
Hi, Emma. Okay.
Thank you. See you good. Have a great Christmas.
Cheers, Emma.
Producer guy,
the dog.
That's I'm going to suggest to producer guy that he leaves that small hiatus in because it had some of the funniest sound effects. It's as the doorbell went, it sounded like you were hitting somebody with a guitar. It was very funny.
Yes,
obviously,
it was the dog walker returning Finley, but the Baroness couldn't answer the door because she's in mince pie manufacturing. She makes amazing mince pies, and she doesn't like them, so I just scoff them.
Well, that's very generous of her this time of year. She makes them, doesn't like them. I love a mince pie. A little bit of orange peel. Yeah. We're very easily distracted today. I gathered it was somebody that Finley must like because there was no barking, but obviously she had Finley with her. And I love the fact that that's very Sussex. You have somebody to walk the dog for you. Stephen Smith has our next question on New Year's Day. How do teams in the EFL pay for new stands or new stadium? I believe clubs used to be able to get grants from the authorities, but is that still a thing?
Not as such. However, we've seen in respect of Scunthorpe United that Glanford Park has now been purchased on behalf of the club, and that has come from the Levelling Up Fund. So it is possible to get grants from government sources. And I believe now that there's a lot of additional funding available following the decision to terminate HS2, the train line, which was supposed to improve links between the south and the north, because the government's been advertising that money's now going to be spent improving potholes in London.
And potholes,
How that improves life in the north, I'm not quite sure, but perhaps people in Accrington and Wetherby will be able to sleep soundly at night knowing that there's less potholes in London, and that's part of Levelling Up.
The people of Accrington and Wetherby, Kieran, are nice people, and I'm sure they will be relieved to know that the people in Hampstead are having a slightly smoother car ride. That they're not being jolted. They're not being jolted in their Uber. I'm sure they'll be resting slightly easier in that knowledge.
So there's no particular fund itself, although it has to be said, as part of both Project Big Picture and Super League, there was an intention to have a central fund which would be made available for clubs to dip into. Almost certainly those clubs would have been Premier League clubs, of course, because they're the ones that need the money more than clubs in the EFL. But there's nothing which exists as far as football in terms of handouts to, for want of a better phrase, grassroots. It has to be done through utilisation of existing opportunities in terms of available regional development grants. We used to have these things called EU grants. I don't know what happened to them. Not seen many of those being taken up recently.
Mm-hmm. Penultimate New Year's Day question, Kieran, comes from Matthew Braithwaite. Matthew says, I've been thinking about those songs that are played after goals at stadiums all over the world. That one by the Fratellis being a prime example. Turns out you can hear that song too often. Would they have agreed a one-off fee? Are our royalties paid out every time it's played? For example, if a team scores 4 goals, would there be 4 separate payments? And I like this bit at the end. What if a goal's disallowed after playing the music?
Yeah, There is a royalty agreement. There's a variety of royalty agreements which are signed by the likes of the Performing Rights Society and various media organisations, various sporting bodies, and that tends to be done on a collective basis. So the more goals, the more money for the artists is the way that it tends to work, which is very good, I think, for the likes of Blur with Song 2 and those other songs. And rightly so, that they are providing part of the match day experience through their artistry, and they should be protected.
I quite like the notion of Damon Albarn sitting furious, stony faced through a 0-0 draw. Just thinking, I've made nothing out of that game. Somebody's come. I want 4 rules. Our last question, Kieran, for New Year's Day. Our last of our first questions of 2024. It comes from Ollie Griffin, and Ollie says it seems to have gone quiet regarding Manchester City's financial breach. Obviously, there hasn't been an outcome, but what will be the next step in those proceedings?
Well, the next step is that Manchester City have to put together 115 defences in respect of the 115 charges. They will also be trying to persuade the Commission that certain evidence which is being put forward by the prosecution is invalid. There's been accusations of breaches of emails, hacked emails. If you take a look at the Premier League handbook, it effectively says doesn't matter. We don't care where the data comes from, and it will be a slow and laborious process. So I don't think we're going to see anything this season. I personally think it's no more than 50-50 if we have a resolution in season 2024-25. I'm looking at summer 25 to autumn 25 before this all is finally put to bed. And the reason for this, it's only again, talking to some of our friends in the legal profession. There were 40,000 documents in the Everton points deduction case, and that was for a fairly narrow remit. It's a fairly narrow period of time. The Manchester City charges go all the way back to 2009 up to 2018. So it's not a single 3-year financial fair play accusation. It's being spread over the course of a decade. Therefore, the number of documents which has to be put together by both the prosecution and the defence is going to be running into the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. You then have to put together a commission, and I don't think it's something which can be heard with the same degree of speed that we had in respect of the Everton's case, because again, it was you got to find 3 experts. Can you go and find 4 days in your diary to listen to all the evidence? Well, the Manchester City case, by all accounts, will take longer for that to be put together, and these people are hugely in demand. Trying to get all of their diaries to act in synchronicity is going to be difficult. I mean, the only way I think where we could have a speedier resolution is if there's some sort of plea bargain by Manchester City. They go to the Premier League and they say, right, okay, we know how much it's costing us in legal fees. We therefore think you must be paying out an absolute fortune as well. And remember, every pound that the Premier League is paying out in legal fees is a pound which is not being given out to the clubs. How about we come to some form of arrangement or agreement? I would imagine that will go down not particularly well with other clubs. No. But in the world of business, never say never.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you, and you'll get access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, and you'll feel better about yourself in the new year. You can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And if you'd like to buy our book or one of our other books or a Price of Football t-shirt, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We will be back on Thursday when normal service will be resumed with a news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, first of all, once again, a big happy new year to everybody. I trust that your your time together has been peaceful and harmonious. Christmas and New Year is a tough time for many people. For many of us, it's the most fantastic time because you get to spend it with family. You get a bit of a break from work and so on. For others, it can be tough. It can be lonely. It can be full of remorse and regret and so on. So for those of you that have had a hard time, never be afraid to reach out. There are really good organisations out there, and I wish you all the best for 2024.
Well said. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Price of football. The price of football.